The day my parents and brothers showed up outside my glass-walled office, holding signs calling me a heartless daughter, I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder, something familiar. It was the same feeling I had at 17, standing in our half-empty kitchen, staring at the note my mother left before vanishing overnight. The same silence I heard inside storage unit 23 when the rain hammered the metal door and I realized no one was coming back for me. They thought they could shame me now. They had no idea what they'd already taught me. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Now, let me take you back. Because none of what happened outside my office that day makes sense until you see where it all began before the money, before the success, before the world thought I had it all. It started long before that. I grew up in a quiet cul-de-sac in Maple Ridge, the kind of neighborhood where sprinklers clicked in the summer and everyone waved even if they didn't remember your name. From the outside, the Carter house looked normal gray shutters, a crooked mailbox, a porch swing that creaked whenever the wind hit it right. But inside, everything tilted toward one person, Ethan. Ethan, the golden boy. Ethan, the miracle son. Ethan, the one my parents pinned every hope, dream, and last dollar on. I didn't understand the pattern when I was little. I just knew that when Monica cooked dinner, she always scooped the biggest piece of chicken onto Ethan's plate. When Jerry bragged to neighbors, it was always about Ethan's baseball stats, never about my perfect attendance certificates taped to the fridge. Even Christmas morning told the story plainly. Ethan tore through boxes, wrapped in shiny paper, and I opened envelopes with practical gifts, socks, gift cards, and one year, a geometry workbook. I swallowed it all. Kids do that. We absorb what hurts until we can't feel the sting anymore. But some memories cut deeper than others. One summer evening when I was 9, the air thick with the smell of cut grass and charcoal, Ethan came home with a trophy from a regional baseball tournament. He slammed it on the dinner table like he'd just returned from conquering Rome. Monica screamed with pride. Jerry clapped him on the back so hard the trophy toppled over. Meanwhile, I had brought home a certificate for placing first in the district spelling bee. I held it up, waiting for someone to notice. "That's cute, Riley," Monica said, barely glancing at it. "Yeah," Ethan snorted. "Spelling isn't a real competition anyway." They laughed. I folded the certificate and slipped it into my pocket before it could become part of the trash. I didn't know it yet, but that moment, small, humiliating, would matter later. Because it taught me exactly how easy it was for them to overlook me, how comfortable they were pretending I didn't need anything. Fast forward to high school. 17. The year everything cracked open. I was working part-time at Bean and Brew, the small coffee shop on Oak Street. The place always smelled like burnt espresso and vanilla syrup, and the floors were sticky no matter how often we mopped them. I'd rush there after school, tie my hair back with whatever elastic I could find, and smile through exhaustion for 4-hour shifts. Monica told people I worked because I wanted extra money for fun. In reality, half my paycheck went into a tiny savings account, birthday bills from relatives, coins I collected from babysitting, tips from coffee shifts, all tucked away in a notebook-sized passbook I hid under my mattress. It was supposed to be my ticket to college applications, maybe a bus pass, maybe just a life that wasn't glued to the Carter household. But the money was gone long before I knew why. One night in September, I overheard Monica and Jerry arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were sharp, frantic, bouncing off the walls like trapped insects. "We can't keep doing this, Jerry," Monica hissed. "We don't have a choice," he snapped. I took the advance. "They're expecting payment." I pressed my back against the hallway wall, breathing so quietly it hurt. Monica cried softly, her practiced, gentle whimper. Jerry stormed out the back door, slamming it so hard the spice jars rattled. I didn't know it then, but they weren't talking about household bills. They were talking about a loan taken out using my information, my social security number, on a form I never signed. But the full truth didn't land until later, after everything fell apart. For now, all I knew was that something inside the house felt off. A tension in the air. A countdown I couldn't hear but felt in my bones. Then came the Tuesday in October. The air was crisp enough to sting my nose as I walked home from my shift, backpack heavy with textbooks, shoes squeaking slightly from spilled latte. The sky had that orange-pink tint that made everything look too pretty to be real. Our house stood at the end of the block. But something looked wrong. The porch light was off. The blinds were drawn. Monica hated drawn blinds. The driveway was empty. I fumbled with my key, hands shaking for no reason I could explain. When the door opened, a cold, hollow quiet spilled out, brushing past me like a gust of winter air. Not the quiet of an empty house. The quiet of abandonment. I stepped inside, stopped, and stared. The living room was half-empty, sofa gone, TV stand gone, photo frames stripped from the walls. Ethan's room across the hall was bare except for marks where posters used to hang. Monica and Jerry's bedroom was cleaned out to the last drawer. Only my room was untouched. Like they'd left me as an afterthought or a casualty. I didn't know it back then, but that moment was only the beginning of everything. I dropped my backpack by the door. It hit the hardwood with a dull thud that echoed through the empty house. For a moment, I honestly thought I'd been robbed. I walked from room to room, calling out for Monica, Jerry, Ethan. My voice bounced back at me, hollow and embarrassed, as if even the walls knew something I didn't. Then I saw it. A sheet of paper, folded neatly in half, sitting on the kitchen counter like a trap. My name written on the front in Monica's looping handwriting. The same handwriting she used to label Ethan's school lunches. My stomach twisted. I opened it. Riley, you're old enough to take care of yourself. We had to move somewhere smaller and couldn't bring you. Don't try to find us. The rent is paid through the end of the month. That was it. 4 lines. 4 casual lines that gutted 17 years of childhood. I kept reading it over and over, waiting for hidden ink to appear. For a clue, for any sign that this wasn't real, that maybe they'd be back. Maybe this was a sick joke. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. But there was no misunderstanding. They were gone. I don't know how long I sat on the cold kitchen tile. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the sun to drop behind the neighbor's house. At some point, I dragged myself to my bedroom, hoping stupidly that maybe they'd left me something. A note taped to the mirror. A clue. Anything. Instead, I found my passbook. The tiny blue booklet where I'd saved every dollar from babysitting, every $5 Monica's sister sent for birthdays, every tip I earned at Bean and Brew. It should have had a few $100s, my entire future in wrinkled 20s. The balance was zero. Zero. I stared at the number until tears slid down my face, not dramatic sobs, just silent, steady drops like a leaking faucet. I wiped them with the sleeve of my hoodie and kept telling myself I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not here. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. They didn't just leave me. They stripped me clean before they did. I found out later how deep the damage went, how Jerry had used my identity to take a small cash advance, how Monica had emptied my savings the same day they packed the car. But in that moment, all I felt was the cold shock of knowing I was disposable. The electricity was cut on day 8. I remember standing in the dark living room, clutching a single lamp that no longer worked, laughing a bitter, breathless laugh. It sounded wrong coming out of me, too old, too broken for someone who still had homework due in the morning. That same night, I went looking for somewhere, anywhere to stay. That's how I found the storage units behind Miller's Hardware. The sign buzzed with flickering orange neon. Storage 24/7. The night air smelled like wet asphalt and gasoline. Frank, the owner, barely looked up when I walked into the tiny office. You renting or visiting? He asked. Renting, I said. Something cheap. He studied me for one long second, then handed me a clipboard. Unit 23. Cash only. That concrete box became mine. I bought a sleeping bag from a thrift store, folded cardboard into something like furniture, and told myself it was temporary. A week, maybe 2. Just until I figured things out. 2 weeks became 6 months. Every morning, I changed into my school clothes inside the cramped space, using the reflection from my phone screen to straighten my hair. Every afternoon, I walked into school pretending everything was fine. No one asked where I lived. No one wondered why my backpack was twice as full as everyone else's. When I told teachers I was tired, they nodded sympathetically and moved on. Looking normal became my greatest skill. At night, I'd lie awake listening to the rain hammer against the metal door, loud, sharp, relentless. I'd stare at the ceiling and trace the future I wanted. I drew it out on the back of a cardboard box. Bullet points, arrows, messy handwriting mapping out how a 17-year-old with nothing could still claw her way into something. I didn't know it back then, but those nights, the cold ones, the hungry ones, The ones where silence felt heavy enough to crush were building someone I hadn't met yet. Someone who wouldn't break so easily. Someone who wouldn't beg. Someone who would never, ever rely on the wrong people again. I just didn't know how soon I'd need her. People like to imagine that abandonment hits you all at once, like a slammed door or a breaking bone. But the truth is quieter. It spreads. It seeps. It finds new corners of your life to rot. I learned that during my first month living between school hallways and storage unit 23, when the world kept moving as if nothing had happened and I had to keep up or fall behind. At school, no one noticed the changes at first. I still sat in my usual seat in chemistry, still turned in my assignments, still laughed softly when my lab partner made bad jokes. I mastered the art of pushing concealer under my eyes in the bathroom mirror, pretending it was allergies when anyone asked why I looked pale. But there were moments when the mask slipped. One morning, my homeroom teacher stopped me after class, her hand gently tapping my elbow. "Riley, you all right? You seem tired." I forced a smile that felt too tight around the edges. "Late night studying." She nodded, relieved to have an easy explanation. People always prefer the version of the truth that demands nothing from them. I walked away thinking that maybe this was better being invisible. Being unseen meant being untouchable. Or so I thought. But the cracks were already forming. A week into my double life, I overheard two girls from my math class whispering by the lockers. "Is Riley okay? She smells like, I don't know, like old laundry or something." I kept walking, face calm, stomach sinking. The storage unit didn't have ventilation, and I'd run out of dryer sheets. That night, I spent my last $3 on a travel-sized deodorizer and sat on the cold concrete floor, spraying my clothes like it was holy water. I didn't know it then, but humiliation would become a familiar companion. When the weather turned colder, the unit's walls trapped the chill. I slept curled up in my thrift store sleeping bag, fully dressed, with my shoes still on. Sometimes I woke up gasping, feeling the air so cold it hurt to breathe. One night, my breath fogged white in the air as I studied algebra by lantern light, and I realized the temperature had dropped below freezing. I pressed my forehead to my knees and whispered to myself, "Just get through this week, just this one." I said that every week. The hardest part was hunger. The pastries I smuggled from work were never enough. The razor-thin margin between hungry and weak became something I monitored like a vital sign. One afternoon, during a pop quiz in English class, my vision blurred. The room swayed. I gripped the edge of my desk and forced myself to stay upright. My teacher misread my trembling hands as anxiety and told me to breathe. I wanted to tell her breathing wasn't the problem, food was. But I didn't, because that would mean revealing everything. And revealing meant losing control. The diner job saved me in ways I didn't understand until much later. Riverside Diner was a metal womb of fluorescent lights, sizzling grills, clinking plates, and endless conversations. Lucia, the owner, eyed me skeptically the first night I asked for the overnight shift. "You're 17, she said, arms crossed. "Kids don't ask for the graveyard shift unless they're running from something." "Maybe I'm running towards something," I replied. She snorted softly but handed me an apron anyway. On my first break, Big Jack sat across from me in a booth, stirring his coffee. He had a face line like cracked leather and the kind of eyes that had seen things and still softened at children and stray cats. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm working." "You're surviving," he corrected. Different skill. I shrugged, not ready to be seen more deeply than I allowed. Life became a rotation of survival loops. School, storage unit, diner. Back to the unit, back to school. On weekends, I walked through town counting public places where I could stay warm without being noticed: libraries, waiting rooms, the church foyer if I pretended to read hymnals. I studied people who lived on the margins, the ones others avoided or pitied. I learned which gas stations let you stay in the bathroom a little longer, which dumpsters behind bakeries held freshly discarded bread, which alley cats would hiss and which would curl up beside you for warmth. And then there were the days that cut deeper. Like the night I bumped into an old family friend, Mrs. Turner, at the grocery store. I'd gone in hungry, planning to buy a single banana with the last dollar in my pocket. She spotted me near the produce section, her face brightening. "Riley, sweetheart, how's your mom? Your dad? And Ethan? Goodness, I haven't seen him in months." My throat tightened. The lie came easier than the truth. "They're good. Busy." She smiled and kept chatting, oblivious to the panic clawing at my chest. As soon as she walked away, I ran, literally ran, out the door, banana forgotten, lungs burning as I reached the sidewalk. Because for a split second, I wished she had known. Wished someone had looked close enough to see the truth leaking through the cracks. But no one ever did unless it benefited them. Months later, I'd learned how true that was. One Thursday afternoon, while organizing the back storage shelves at the diner, Lucia called me to the front counter. Her tone was strange, gentle, almost cautious. "There's someone asking for you," she said. My heart stopped. I stepped out and saw a woman I vaguely recognized from my old neighborhood. She frowned when she saw me in an apron, hair tied back, face flushed from the steam of the kitchen. "Your mother's been telling people you ran away," she said. "She said you stole money and disappeared. I just wanted to hear your side." Something inside me went very, very still. The smear campaign had started long before I knew it, and I had no idea how far it would spread. The woman's words clung to me the rest of that shift, like grease that wouldn't wash off no matter how hard I scrubbed. Stole money. Ran away. The story traveled easily cleaner than the truth, more palatable, more flattering for the people who left me behind. I walked back to Storage Unit 23 that night with a tension in my jaw so tight it felt like my teeth might crack. I kept replaying it. How quickly Monica must have said those words. How familiar she was with the script of her own innocence. I didn't confront her. Not then. I didn't even have a phone to call her with. But that lie settled deep inside me, like a shard of glass I knew would cut again later. What I didn't expect was how soon it would happen. A few weeks later, I walked into chemistry class and heard whispers sharp, hushed, slicing at the edges. "Is it true she stole from her family? I heard they kicked her out." "No, I heard she bailed and left them with debt." The words circled me like vultures. I held my binder against my chest and kept walking to my seat. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. But my throat felt like it was closing. During the lab assignment, my teacher asked to speak to me in the hallway. Her face was kind but hesitant, as if she didn't know which version of me she was supposed to believe. "Riley, I heard some concerning things. Are you safe at home?" Safe. At home. Two words that didn't belong anywhere near each other. "I'm fine," I said. "People like to talk." She didn't push. She didn't ask more. She didn't dig. She nodded and let me go. And I realized then that adults weren't guardians of truth, they were bystanders of whatever story they found easiest to accept. The lie my mother told became a shadow I couldn't outrun, but I pushed it down and kept moving. I had to. Survival didn't pause for emotional clarity. That winter, the diner became my lifeline. On a slow night, Big Jack slid into the booth across from me. He set down his coffee and stared at me the way only old men with broken pasts do, like they recognize a wound even when it's wrapped neatly. "You've got that look," he said. "What look?" "The look of someone bracing for the next punch, even when the last one didn't finish hurting." I swallowed. "Life hits everyone." "Yeah," he said, "but it shouldn't be your own family throwing the hardest punches." I froze. I never told him anything. Not the details. Not the letter. Not the zero balance in my savings. But somehow, he understood without needing the full story. "Just remember this," he continued. "You stand back up smarter than you were when you fell. That's how you win." I didn't know then how much I'd need that advice. How literal the standing back up part would become. Because the next blow didn't come from hunger or cold or exhaustion. It came from Ethan. I was wiping down the diner counter when Lucia waved me over, eyebrows raised in concern. "There's a guy outside asking for you," she said. "He said he's your brother." My heart dropped so violently it almost knocked the air out of me. Ethan stood outside near the neon sign, hands in his pockets, looking the same and somehow older. He scanned my uniform, the apron smeared with grease stains, and his expression flickered first surprise, then something colder. Disappointment? Judgment? I couldn't tell. "Riley," he said, voice stiff. "What do you want?" I asked. He shifted his weight. "Mom and Dad, they said you ran away, that you took money and left them with bills. They're really worried." Worried. The word punched harder than any fist. "I didn't run," I said quietly. "They left me." He flinched just barely, but enough to tell me he knew. Deep down, he knew. Yet he shook his head, choosing convenience over truth. "Riley, it wasn't like that." "Really? Then explain how the house was empty. Explain the letter." Explain my savings being drained. His eyes flicked to the pavement. I don't know everything. They were stressed. So stressed they abandoned their kid? You're strong, he muttered. You've always figured things out. There it was. The justification, the excuse wrapped in a compliment. I stepped closer. Answer one thing. If you could go back, would you have taken me with you? He hesitated. A single moment. Barely a breath. But he didn't say yes. He didn't say anything at all. That silence carved deeper than any insult. I walked away before he could finish his half-formed excuses. Behind me, he called my name, but his voice held no urgency. No guilt, just inconvenience. I didn't look back. Winter rolled into spring, but nothing warmed. The lies about me spread quietly, like mold. Teachers grew cautious. Coworkers whispered. Customers at the diner sometimes stared too long before pretending not to recognize me. I kept my head down, pushing forward. I didn't know it then, but those rumors would resurface 12 years later with sharper teeth. The first real fracture in my armor came on a rain-soaked April night when I returned to the storage unit shivering from the walk home. I pulled up the metal door and froze. Someone had broken in. My sleeping bag was dragged halfway across the floor. My cardboard boxes overturned. My few belongings, books, thrift store clothes, notebooks scattered like trash. I stood there trembling, rain dripping from my hair, my lungs refusing to expand. For the first time since the day my family vanished, I felt something close to panic claw at my throat. Was it random? Was it targeted? Or had they found me? I didn't know. And that was the worst part, the not knowing. I spent the whole night awake, sitting against the cold wall, clutching my backpack like a shield. Every sound in the hallway made my heart jolt. Every shadow made me tense. That was the night I understood something essential. Surviving was no longer enough. I needed a future big enough, stable enough, powerful enough that no one, not my family, not strangers, not fate, could ever put me back in a concrete box again. And I didn't realize it then. But that night was the first spark of the person I'd become. The girl who had nothing was already starting to build her empire. The conference room was all glass and steel, clean, bright, silent. The skyline glowed behind me like a wall of distant fire. It was the kind of room built for negotiations with real stakes, and that morning, the air felt sharp enough to cut. I chose the seat at the head of the table. Not out of ego, out of clarity. I needed them to see what they had made. Security escorted them in at exactly 9 a.m. Monica stepped through the doorway first, her hands clasped together, her shoulders trembling just enough to send a message. Jerry followed, smaller than I remembered, but still carrying that simmering defiance under his skin. Ethan trailed behind them, eyes darting from the glass walls to the whiteboard to the documents already laid out. He looked like he wanted to bolt but couldn't. Their court-appointed lawyer hovered awkwardly near the door. My attorney, Rachel, sat beside me, her expression carved from stone. Monica's gaze swept the room before settling on me. "Riley," she whispered, "you look successful." I didn't reply. She took a seat across from me, smoothing her blouse like she needed to tidy herself before playing the role. Jerry dropped into the chair beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight. Ethan sat last, glancing at me but dropping his gaze when our eyes met. Rachel folded her hands. "This meeting is being recorded," she said, "for clarity and for legal protection on both sides." Monica let out a shaky breath. "We don't need all that formality. We're family." The words slid across the table like oil. I leaned forward slightly. "You had 12 years to remember that." A flicker crossed her face. Hurt? Guilt? Irritation? It was impossible to tell. Monica had always blurred those lines. Jerry huffed. "We didn't come here to fight. We came here because we're drowning. And it's time for you to step up." Step up, like I had been on vacation for 12 years. I opened the folder in front of me and slid the first sheet toward them. "This is the letter you left me when I was 17. Monica's breath caught. Ethan's jaw clenched. Jerry didn't touch the paper. I continued. "And this is the bank statement showing my savings account was emptied the same morning you moved out." Monica shook her head quickly. "We didn't have a choice." "No," I interrupted, my voice cold and steady. "You had options. You picked the one where I suffered, and you didn't." Ethan leaned forward, palms out, voice cracking. "Riley, can we just talk? Forget the documents for a second." I looked at him, Really looked. Did you forget them when you told people I ran away? When you said I stole money? I asked. Your lie followed me for years. You told it again 12 years later when you thought it would benefit you. So no, you don't get to forget. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed. Monica's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed. Riley, sweetheart, we made mistakes. We're sorry. We came here to fix it. That's not true, I said. You came here because you need money. The silence in the room thickened, pressing against the glass. Jerry finally snapped. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. You owe us. Rachel didn't speak, she didn't need to. The absurdity hung there, stupid and loud. I stood, pushing my chair back with a soft scrape. The city lights behind me made my reflection sharp, almost ghost-like in the glass. You want honesty? I said. Here it is. I looked at each of them in turn. I feel nothing for you. Not love, not hate. Nothing. Monica's lip quivered. You don't mean that. I mean every word, I said. I turned to Ethan. You say we're family. But family doesn't stay silent when a child is abandoned. Family doesn't spread lies. Because the truth makes them look bad. Family doesn't show up only when it's convenient. His eyes reddened, but he didn't deny it. My voice softened, not kinder, just quieter, sharper. You taught me something the day you left. You taught me that people can choose themselves over you without warning. And once I learned that lesson, I learned another. I stepped closer, placing both hands on the table. I don't need any of you. Jerry slammed his palm onto the table. You're heartless. No, I said calmly. I just finally learned the value of my peace. Monica's tears spilled. Riley, please. Your father is sick. We're struggling. Help us. Just help us this once. There it was. The pitch. The plea wrapped in guilt. But her voice. Her voice was the same one that read that 4-line note in my head for 12 years. I leaned in until she had to look directly into my eyes. You abandoned me, I said quietly. And now you want the person you threw away to save you. I straightened. No. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Jerry's face twisted. We'll ruin you. If you don't help. You already tried, I said, lifting a second folder. The rumors. The flyers. The social media posts. The harassment of my employees. Their lawyers stiffened. I continued. Every violation of the restraining order is documented. Every lie is archived. Every incident is recorded. Ethan palled. I softened my tone, not warmth, just finality. Leave me alone, and you walk away with whatever life you have left. Push me again, and I will bury you in paperwork and legal consequences until you can't breathe. No one moved. No one spoke. Then I gave them the final cut. When you leave this room, I want you to forget I exist. Because I already forgot you. I walked out. Not fast, not angry, just done. Behind me, I heard Monica's breath hitch. Jerry curse under his breath. Ethan whisper my name like a question he already knew the answer to. And for the first time in my life, the silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt like closure. Cold, clean, final. I didn't look back when I stepped out of the conference room, but I didn't have to. The silence behind me said everything. It wasn't the silence of shock or guilt. It was the silence of people finally realizing their last lifeline had snapped. My heels clicked against the marble hallway as I walked back to my office. Each step felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for half my life. Not forgiveness, not healing, just release. When I reached my office, the city stretched beneath me, lights blinking like signals from a world I had built with my own hands. My assistant Megan slipped in quietly, worry written across her face. Did it go bad? She asked. It went how it needed to, I said. That was the truth. Not triumphant. Not cruel. Necessary. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the digital archive I'd been building for months. Scanned documents, witness statements, bank records, security footage, legal reports, time-stamped screenshots of every lie they'd spread. A full map of 12 years of truth, preserved with the precision of someone who'd been forced to defend herself for far too long. I didn't plan to release it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But having the power, the proof, the leverage, they would never see it coming if they tried again. This time, the narrative wouldn't break me. It would bury them. People think revenge is an explosion, a dramatic confrontation, a moment, But the real thing is quieter. It's preparation, boundaries, distance, knowing exactly where to strike if you ever have to. The file blinked on my screen, thousands of pages distilled into one folder, simply labeled insurance. Not vengeance, not cruelty, just protection. They thought cutting me loose when I was 17 meant I would disappear. What they never understood was this. I don't disappear. I rebuild. And whatever they had planned for me next, I was already 10 steps ahead. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, make sure you subscribe. Stories like mine aren't rare, they're just rarely spoken out loud. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing, I want you here with me. This journey isn't over, and neither is this story. Hit like, drop a comment about where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Because trust me, family isn't always blood, and survival is just the beginning.